achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, I will be breaking down the upcoming UFC 205 event, which will take place on November 12th in New York City, New York at Madison Square Gardens. We have been waiting a long time to say that. And the UFC has certainly delivered, at least on paper, a fantastic card. Not 5, your typical regular pay-per-view lineup, but 6 main card fights, including not 1, not 2, but 3 title fights, including a champion versus champion main event. I'll be breaking all of that down for you in this episode of the show. All 7 of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. And the preliminary lineup, the fights are fantastic as well. And we're coming off a pretty damn good showing at UFC Fight Night 98, 12 fights in all. I went a sparkling 10-2. 10-2. Yes, I'm not just a fast-talking idiot. Once in a while, I get things right. And I picked up a myriad of upsets. Joe Soto over Marco Beltran, Ricardo Lamas over Charles Oliveira, Diego Sanchez over Marcin Held, and I had Tony Ferguson in the main event. The only major fight that I got wrong was Rashad Magomedov, my apologies, other Magomedov, not the heavyweight version, losing in a very close fight, but I felt he lost the fight. Nonetheless, it was a pretty darn good night overall. The bet packs came through, winning just over 40 units total. My DraftKings lineup, 509.5 points, damn good. 5 for 5 top 5 confidence list. All 3 of my top 5 value plays hit with Ferguson number 1, Sanchez 2, and Lamas 3. Betting scenarios were decent, including a 5-2 half run, and I won 4 props out of 7, so not a bad night at all. They will be available again for $12. If you want to invest with a little protection, where you get $10 back if you invest, you can purchase a protected bet pack as well. That's available on my website. You can check that out. And also, if you want to finish the 4 fights with November, including the 2 next weekend, there's 2 cards next weekend, you can buy the subscription pack and save yourself $12. We've got a lot of stick fights, and make sure as well you check out the polls. Get your say on who you think is going to win the fights at this monumental event. So make sure you can do that as well. Everything available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Check me out on Facebook as well. And without further ado, let's get to our first main card prediction. We kick off our pay-per-view predictions in the women's bantamweight division with the first of 6 current or former champions fighting in the main card, 8 in total at this event. The former bantamweight champion and number 1 ranked women's fighter in the division, Miesha Tate, Miesha Cupcake Tate, if you will, 18 wins and 6 losses, takes on the 8th ranked fighter in the division, Raquel Pennington, with a record of 8 wins and 6 defeats. Now, Tate is coming off her title fight loss at UFC 200 to Amanda Nunes, where she dropped her strap by submission. All of her dreams quickly over. Her aspirations of rematching Ronda Rousey with her title wrapped around her waist dashed. For Raquel Pennington, she is riding a wave of momentum heading into this fight. She avenged the loss of Jessica Andrade. She has won 3 fights in a row, 4 of her last 5, with the only loss in that span a close split decision to the former champion Holly Holm. Physically, Rocky Pennington, 1 inch taller, 2 inch reach advantage, and she is 2 years younger. She also has less mileage with just 13 pro bouts to the 25 for Tate, which would give Tate the experience advantage overall. Pennington, looking at her numbers first, 3.96 strikes landed per minute. That's a pretty good tilt. Not overwhelming, but still, it's decent. She works at a solid pace, shows good footwork, throws a very stiff left jab, and she likes to follow it up with a thumping right hand. Against Holly Holm, she had success when she was able to close the distance with Holm and let her hands go. She has just a single win by knockout. She throws hard, but she doesn't have one-punch power by any stretch of the imagination. That one knockout win came back in her pro debut. She is very effective on the inside, can work her clinch game, land short knees and elbows, very strong in the position, and can do a good job of controlling her opponent and really muscling them around. As far as her wrestling is concerned, she's certainly not overwhelming, but she's a decent grappler, and she is improving. She scored 3 takedowns in her win over Elizabeth Phillips, one of her better performances as far as wrestling was concerned. And overall in her UFC career, she has picked up 10 takedown completions, averaging 1.5 per fight at a 40% completion rate. When she beat Elizabeth Phillips, there was a lot of clinch fighting. She did have her issues. She got stuck in a tight guillotine at one point when defending a single leg, was taken down. Her opponent attacked her neck. She got out of that position. She spent some time on her back, which was certainly concerning, and it's something you don't want to do against Miesha Tate. But that's something that happened in that fight, and she was still able to prevail. Pennington's style, she tends to have close fights. 3 UFC split decisions. She's 1-2. Both of her losses in the UFC were by split decision, which shows how competitive she's been in all of her fights. But still, that's not something you want. When you're going the distance a lot, you want to be able to prove to the judges you are the better fighter. For Tate, she comes into this matchup, and we know she is at her best when she is fighting on the mat. She beat Sarah McMahon and Jessica Eye on the basis of her top game. Submitted Holly Holm on the ground as well. She averages 2.15 takedowns at a 32% completion rate, and she is a smothering top position player. But prior to submitting Holly Holm, she had a lot of trouble closing the gap. When she fought Amanda Nunes, she couldn't keep Nunes down after shooting in and having some success there. And while she was able to control Kat Zingano, that's probably was her undoing, is the fact that she couldn't do it for the entire duration of the bout. So Tate's success hinges heavily on her wrestling. She has improved her striking. We saw her hurt Jessica Eye in that fight, which actually turned that fight in her favor, which she was probably losing early on. But it's still an area she can't simply rely on wholeheartedly and win a fight, especially against, I guess, depending against who you're facing. That certainly has been the case during her UFC career. When she fought Sarah McMahon, she got cracked with the right hand early. I think it broke her orbital bone. Sorry about that. And same thing, Jessica Eye had success hurting her. Nunes cracked her with the left hand. Or the right hand as well, and Tate has a tendency to carry her left hand low, which opens her up to a right hand, a right high kick. Anything on the right side, it is going to get through, or at least has a higher percentage of landing. Again, Tate tends to get in trouble when she showcases her striking or when she's forced to rely on it. We saw that against Zingano when Zingano rallied and took her out. Even against Julie Kedzie way back in Strikeforce, Tate got lit up on the feet before picking up a submission win. Jessica Eye cracked her with some early strikes. The movement and jab of Eye really threw off Miesha Tate, and I was getting through some multi-punch combinations in that fight before Tate was able to land something big and get that fight to the floor. Miesha tends to throw naked kicks, her punch is a little bit wider, and she will overextend at times on her strikes. She was getting the worst of that matchup with Eye before hurting her and getting on top. Not much offense against Holly Holm overall throughout the rounds that she lost when she wasn't able to get the fight to the ground, and that was certainly an issue. Tate is coming into this fight with a post-title fight letdown. She took a lot of damage against Nunes, got absolutely lit up. The weight cut has also become a major issue for her. We've seen how that was such a big problem going into the Nunes fight. It very well could here, especially with the lack of momentum, seeing as you're not the champion, you're fighting a fighter who's not even ranked in the top 5. That has to be concerning. Pennington is strong. She could struggle with the mat game if Tate can get her down. But I expect her to use her movement, use her footwork, use that jab, and fire that right hand. Tate averages just 1.98 strikes landed per minute, 2 strikes landed per minute less than Rocky Pennington. And they get hit almost the same amount. Rocky has to avoid the wrestling, has to avoid those big moments. I think Pennington is going to shock everyone. She's going to come in, she's going to outwork Miesha Tate. She's going to show her strength in the clinch, superior striking, and my prediction is Raquel Pennington to defeat Miesha Tate by decision. Fight number 2 on the main card takes place in the UFC's welterweight division. Will feature the 5th-ranked and former Ultimate Fighter winner Kelvin Gastelum with a current record of 13 wins and 2 losses, taking on the 6th-ranked former lightweight title challenger Donald Cowboy Cerrone with a record of 31 wins, 7 defeats, and 1 no contest. And this bout was originally slated to feature Robbie Lawler taking on Cowboy. Lawler withdrew shortly after the fight was announced, or at least talked about, and Gastelum stepped in. He's had a full camp to prepare for this matchup. Now, Cerrone, he has certainly made a run at 155 pounds. He actually called for a rematch with Eddie Alvarez, who's fighting in our main event tonight, but this fight makes more sense for his current position considering how good he has looked since coming to this division. He is 3-0 at welterweight, stopping Rick Story, Patrick Cote, and Alex Oliveira all in impressive fashion. For Gastelum, he is coming off a win over a lackluster performing Johnny Hendricks, who could be on the verge of retirement. He lost to Neil Magny one fight earlier in an upset that yours truly predicted. Now for Cerrone, as he said, he's a former lightweight. Gastelum, when he won the Ultimate Fighter, it took place at 185 pounds. Nonetheless, Donald Cerrone is a very tall man, 4 inches taller than Gastelum. He'll have a 2-inch reach advantage, but Kelvin comes in 8 years younger than the Cowboy. Now they have a common opponent. They both have fought Rick Story. Gastelum won a split decision back in 2014 in a very competitive fight. Cerrone TKO'd the aforementioned Story just last August, so obviously MMA math would suggest Donald Cerrone all day in this fight, baby, all day. Not the case. Let's take a look at how this actually breaks down. Cerrone's coming into this fight with a nice escalation of competition. Gastelum is another step up from Rick Story. He's been step up from step. He is working towards a title shot. Can Kelvin shut him down? Now with the Cowboy, he has a lethal Muay Thai striking attack. Hard kicks, combination striker, dangerous at range, and equally as dangerous in close. I love his knee strikes, exceptionally hard. He throws a beautiful push kick to the midsection, low and high with it. He'll also throw round kicks up and down the body, and he does an excellent job of setting up his kicking techniques by targeting other areas, forcing you to cover up, and then boom, if he's going to the body and you're covering up your sides, he's going to the head with it. Forces you to defend one area and then targets the next. He is an orthodox striker, so keep that in mind. And that makes that stepping knee counter to a southpaw as they moved in, and as Gastelum is a southpaw, it makes that counter knee an exceptionally effective weapon to stop that forward pressure. Now, when Patrick Cote fought Cerrone, his legs were compromised by the low kicks of Cowboy. We saw Eddie Alvarez have a similar situation. And that's something we always have to keep in mind with Cowboy, simply because we know he's capable of slowing guys down and taking away their ability to fight effectively because they cannot push off on a damaged base. Now, also Cowboy, very effective at working those elbows and knees in combination. He doesn't just throw them singularly, he will work it with his punch and kicks, the more common techniques. His short hooks in close led to the finish of Patrick Cote, which was darn impressive. He throws a lot of feints and fakes to draw his opponent's tendencies out and then attack, and he can land quick, short combinations in close, including a hard right hand at short range. Now, when he fought Rick Story, it was an absolute brutal video game style combination, a combo that put Story down, attacking the body and head, and eventually going with a head kick to put him on his butt. Very accurate, very quick. The guy looks fantastic at 170 pounds. But he has had issues in the past. Going back to his lightweight days, he struggled early on with the boxing of Eddie Alvarez. He was defeated by Nate Diaz, who put a lot of pressure on him and outboxed him in that fight. We saw him rock with a big right hand from RDA and eventually hurt to the body in their rematch for the title fight and finished. And that's something you have to keep in mind, that Donald can be hurt. Another thing with Cerrone, a lot of people don't talk about, he has improved his wrestling. He took down Patrick Cote. More impressively, he took down Rick Story. We already know he's a very capable submission fighter, and we saw that when Story took him down, he attacked off his back and made that position not something Story wanted to remain in. Overall, Cowboy, decent takedown defense, and if an opponent tries to grab a single leg, look for him to limp leg out. Now, Kelvin Gastelum, the guy, a lot of people call him Mini Kane, and you can certainly see the comparisons. He does his best work in close, pushes forward behind his punches, continues to maintain that pressure, and unloads with heavy-handed barrages. Against Johnny Hendricks, he looked fantastic, exceptionally light on his feet, and he was slamming in excellent leg kicks, really targeting the inside leg and taking away Johnny Hendricks' base. He was landing some body kicks at range as well, which is a nice weapon he has available to him. Look for him to either paw or jab with his right hand and then fire that straight left or a left hook. He landed a clean left hand routinely over the top against Hendricks and was certainly buzzing him and backing him off. Now, going back a couple fights earlier, he fought Nico Musoki, who's a long, very tall fighter. He had a lot of trouble closing the distance against Musoki. Only landed 4 strikes in the opening round. Similarly, when he fought another tall man in Neil Magny, he was struggling defensively because he kept backing up in straight lines, and Magny was able to hit him because he knew where he was going. He has to avoid that in this fight. Gastelum can work his wrestling, but he was out-grappled by Magny after getting the fight going to the mat, and overall he's been given up 12 takedowns in the UFC, which is certainly a concerning number. Additionally, keep in mind, there are weight-cutting issues that could be at play here, as Gastelum has had issues in the past. His cardio tends to be a weapon, or it could be a liability if he doesn't have a good weight cut. For Cerrone, fighting at 170 seems to have rejuvenated him, and his ability to target the body certainly can take away a fighter's gas. In this fight, look for Cerrone to have success with his kicking attack, keeping Kelvin on the outside, and then counter-striking as Gastelum tries to push forward and attack. He'll get sloppy, he'll get desperate, he'll put himself in some dangerous positions. That knee to the body that I talked about earlier that Cerrone's going to throw is going to slow down Kelvin's forward pressure. Kelvin's left hand, which is his biggest weapon, is not something Cerrone's had issues with before. It's been the right hand of previous opponents. That means Kelvin's biggest weapon is not going to be nearly as effective as other guys who've had success against Cerrone. I think Cerrone's going to find surprising success with his takedowns, putting Gastelum on the mat, maybe counter level change when Kelvin comes forward, get on top, really showcase some improved wrestling again, catching Kelvin off guard. Cerrone's going to land more strikes. They will be more impactful. He's going to land those takedowns as well. And my prediction is Donald Cowboy Cerrone to defeat Kelvin Gastelum by decision. Up next, it's the UFC middleweights as the former champion, the number 2 ranked Chris, the All-American Weidman, returns to action with a 13-1 record against the number 4 ranked Soldier of God, Yoel Romero of Cuba, with a record of 11 wins and 1 defeat. Now, Weidman is coming off a massive title fight defeat against Luke Rockhold, not his first title defense, as he defended both against Anderson Silva in the rematch and against Vitor Belfort, but still it was a huge loss against Luke Rockhold, but it also turned out to be the first loss of his pro career, so those could counterbalance there. And Weidman has been out of action for 11 months. For Yoel Romero, he won a split decision, a contentious split decision over Jacare Souza. I picked Romero in that fight, but I thought Souza, it was a close fight. Nonetheless, he tested positive for a banned substance. There was a whole to-do in that situation. It was not listed in the substances he was taking, so maybe he's not at fault, I guess. He's been out of action for 11 months, which included a 6-month suspension. Physically, Weidman 2 inches taller, he'll have a 5-inch reach advantage, and he is the younger man by 7 years. And in this fight, we have a matchup of a former top elite-level NCAA Division I wrestler in Weidman taking on an Olympic caliber, top-rated Olympic caliber wrestler in Yoel Romero. So that's a fantastic matchup there. More often than not, though, we see these wrestlers go head-to-head. We see striking fights as their wrestling cancels each other out. Why not look at the wrestling stats first, though? Let's do it. Weidman, 3.52 takedowns per fight at a 55% completion rate. That's decent. 81% takedown defense. That's impressive. 24 completed takedowns in his UFC career, 3 given up, all 3 of them coming against Luke Rockhold. For Yoel Romero, just 1.85 takedowns per fight at a 35% completion rate. Not overwhelming wrestling numbers. 75% takedown defense. He's landed 11, given up 6. I believe of those 11, 7 came against, it could be 7, could be 6, they came against Brad Tavares. So a lot of his completed takedowns came in one fight. He actually has given up a lot of takedowns, including in the Derek Brunson match, which he had to rally to win. Now, for Weidman, when you look at Chris Weidman, he tends to work his wrestling more often than Yoel Romero. When he fought Anderson Silva, he shot right away for the takedown, landed some big ground and pound, big elbows on top. He doesn't need a lot of room to posture up, so if he can get a little distance, he can do some damage. When he fought Rockhold, he got Luke Rockhold's back early on, he was standing, but he made a mistake, got shucked off, and put on the mat. And that's not something you can't give Yoel Romero top position time. That's something Weidman needs to be very careful of and choose his spots. Ultimately, in that fight, we saw Weidman busted up on the mat when he got put on his back, and that's something, again, Romero, you cannot allow Romero to get in that position. What Weidman does very well, though, he's learning how to use his take striking. He'll fake a takedown and throw strikes, primarily a left hook. It's very effective. He throws some nice combinations as well. When he is striking, nice right-left combination with successful pressure as he is moving forward. He tends to paw with the left, throw some short hooks with that extended hand, and then look for him to clinch up and land short punches, elbows, knees on the inside, and really wear on his opponent, embrace that grind. His kicking game also is developing nicely. He'll throw a nice kick to the body. He'll go low. He'll go to the body. He'll go to the head as well. Against Rockhold, he threw a very ill-advised turning side kick to the head, which ultimately led to him getting put on the mat and destroyed and eventually finished in the next round. I also picked Luke Rockhold in that fight. So that's something to look at. We saw when he fought Lyoto Machida, at times he had issues landing strikes against Machida. He tended to start and restart his combinations. He got a little bit wild with Vitor Belfort, chasing him across the cage, and that got him into a little bit of trouble. But again, he's a young fighter still developing his offensive game. He does have some issues, though, when under fire. I don't like the way he shelled up when Belfort started to unload. It seemed that when Silva and Belfort both busted him up a little bit, he was a little bit bewildered at times, and that has to be concerning. Machida was able to hurt him a couple times with left hands. He seemed at times to struggle in that matchup when Machida put pressure on him. Didn't respond well to getting hit, and Rockhold really exposed that you can break this man down if you put enough damage on him. I guess you can break anyone down. It just seemed like Weidman was there to be beaten up on. Now, with Yoel Romero, the man is an exceptionally dangerous and talented striker. He covers distance very well. He changes speeds and rhythms so fluidly that it really throws opponents off. He slides in and out of range. He's exceptionally dynamic and diverse with his striking attack. I like the way he cut off the cage against Lyoto Machida, kept constant pressure, lots of kicks early on. He throws a nice counter left hand, throws a very quick 1-2 with a big right hand landing against Tim Kennedy, which hurt him. It was left hands putting down Derek Brunson. He'll throw a power push kick to the body, which can launch his opponent across the cage. Overall, nice round body kicks, and that jumping knee, I believe he knocked out Clifford Stark with it back in the day. He's exceptionally dangerous and really comes out of nowhere. Also, defensively, he has the ability to see strikes coming and move away. Tim Kennedy was having a heck of a lot of trouble landing strikes on this guy simply because he couldn't Romero was able to identify when Kennedy was attacking and was able to move out of the way. We saw him drop Jacare Souza with a spinning back fist, but in that fight, not a lot of output prior to that. He was not nearly as active, and as the fight progressed, he was not nearly as active as when Jacare started to put pressure on him, started to push, and we saw him slow down in that fight, and Romero stood right in front of him and wasn't throwing a ton. As far as his grappling is concerned, again, he hasn't been an overwhelming wrestler outside of the Tavares fight, but he was able to routinely shrug off Tim Kennedy's attempts to put him on the ground. When Jacare got in tight, we saw Romero, he tends to be a bit of a cheater at times. Czech Congo style. Grab the cage, stay vertical. Jacare got on top and had him in all sorts of trouble. That had a lot to do with fatigue. When Romero looks to use his takedowns, quick trips, power doubles, he can do it all. Get his opponent on the ground and unload with serious fight-ending ferocity. Yoel Romero in his fights is at his best when he fights at his pace. He explodes, then he slows down, he explodes again, he preserves his cardio, and he fights at a fight that he wants to fight. Fight. Weidman needs to come out and push him. Even without takedowns, use the clinch, wear him down, force him to work. Avoid getting tagged with those big strikes, easier said than done, but force Romero to work. Do not allow him to set the pace. The layoff won't improve Romero's cardio. In fact, it probably will hurt it a little bit, and that earlier weight cut situation, having to make weight earlier, might be an issue as well. Look for Weidman to rebound from his first loss in this fight, come back from his first career loss, come back in this fight and look better. Romero's output probably requires a stoppage if he can't dominate you or hurt you from start to finish. I think the first round is close. I think Weidman starts to take over in rounds 2 when he really starts to wear Romero down. And my prediction is Chris Weidman to defeat Yoel Romero by submission. Now it's time for a triumvirate, a trio, if you will, of UFC title fights. The first coming in the women's strawweight division, and it is the champion, Joanna, and I'm going to butcher both these names, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, undefeated at 12-0, taking on the number 2 ranked fighter in the division, the challenger, fellow Polish fighter Karolina Kowalkiewicz, undefeated with a record of 10 wins and 0 defeats. As I said, it's Poland versus Poland in this title fight, and these two are both undefeated. And Joanna Jedrzejczyk is looking for her 4th title defense overall. But keep in mind, these two have actually fought before, way back as they were amateurs. And Joanna won by submission rear naked choke, I believe, in a closely contested and sometimes controversial fight, the way they talk about it. Nonetheless, so she has a little bit of a leg up. Karolina certainly looking to gain some revenge. Karolina comes into this fight having defeated Thug Rose and earning this opportunity. She is 3-0 in the UFC, and I said she lost it back in 2012 when she lost that amateur bout against the champion. Physically, Jedrzejczyk, 3 inches taller. They have the same reach. Joanna is actually 2 years younger. And one of the big things I look at in this fight, is there going to be a letdown for Joanna coming off vanquishing her enemy, Claudia Gadelha? How does she refocus and get ready? She needs to make sure she's at the peak of her game because Karolina is hungry coming into this fight. Looking at the challenger first, she is a high-volume striker. Good combinations, left jab, straight right. She'll mix in uppercuts and elbows at range, lots of side kicks, and she can be an effective counter-striker as well. The one thing I like what she does is she tends to finish her combinations with a variety of things. She'll throw punches and go with a low kick. Next time it's a high kick, then it's a knee. She mixes it up and forces you to get in a rhythm. You think, oh, I know what's coming next, and then boom, she hits you with something else. That makes her exceptionally effective when she's attacking and putting her strikes together. Now, at the same time, she tends to be a bit of a slow starter. She has been outstruck in the opening round of all 3 of her UFC fights, and she tends to hang her left hand low, which can result in her getting hit with some big shots. Against Rose, she was pushing forward early and putting good pressure, but not throwing or letting her hands go, and Rose was cracking her with some decent strikes in that fight. Every time Karolina stepped back at range and didn't attack, she was getting punched. Strikes were coming over the top of her hands. Again, they tend to be a little bit low, and Rose was capitalizing. Karolina's best position is in the clinch. Once she can get inside, look for her to unload with a range of close-range destructive weapons, let's call them that. She does a very good job of controlling her opponent's head and attacking off the break, and look for her to dig those knees in. Against Rose, she was probably losing early on, but she turned the fight once she got to the inside, landing elbows, knees to the body, short punches. She really took away Rose's win and momentum and broke that girl with her clinch fighting. Now, looking at Joanna Jedrzejczyk, she is a lethal Muay Thai striker, a world champion at this craft. 6.36 strikes landed per minute versus 2.32 strikes absorbed. She hits her opponents a hell ton and doesn't get hit nearly as much. Against Carla Esparza, these are some ridiculous numbers. She got hit 4 times in that fight. The former champion hit her 4 times before she got taken out. Against Jessica Penne, a fantastic fighter, Jedrzejczyk landed 126 strikes, 220 against Letourneau, and 176 against Claudia Gadelha, and that number probably would have been higher if she could have stayed on her feet for the entire duration of that bout. She has made a career of beating grapplers. Keep this in mind. Penne, Esparza, Gadelha, all grapplers. Karolina Kowalkiewicz is probably the best striker she has faced to date in the UFC. The other thing I like with Joanna, she's exceptionally confident, but is she too confident? Could she possibly be overlooking an opponent she's beaten before? She has incredibly quick hands, throws good combinations, level changes, very fluid with her striking, moves in and out of range, and she has power. She has a lot of pop. Look for her to pop out that left jab, fire body kicks, elbows. She's always moving forward and moving around and uses a lot of movement. Head kick is off. She'll throw a head kick off the clinch break, which is very effective as well. And front kick to the face, she'll go that way. She'll go to the body as well, just digs it into her opponents. She dropped. Now, keep this in mind, though. Against Claudia Gadelha has improved her striking and dropped her early in the fight, so she's not infallible on the feet. She can be hurt. And in that fight, she had some issues fending off the takedowns, and that's something that if Karolina looks to switch things up, we could see Joanna struggle with. One thing I like with Joanna, though, when she gets an opponent pinned in the cage, look for her to unload and look to finish that fight along the cage. She is lethal when she gets her opponent pinned in that situation. She did it against Penne, she did it against Esparza, she did it against Gadelha. She is a monster. If she smells blood, you are in trouble. Now, she did have some issues getting stuck in the clinch early with Valerie Letourneau, but still very strong in that position, was able to eventually counter out of that. This could be a very close fight against two similarly skilled fighters. Karolina tends to be a slow starter, which is not a good thing, especially with Joanna tending to get much better, Joanna getting better as the fight progresses. She cannot afford to give away that early round, because that could ultimately be what decides if we go the distance. I think Karolina is defensively vulnerable at distance. She can be hit at distance, and Rose hit her a lot in that position because, like I said, she holds her hands low, and I think Joanna Jedrzejczyk is too quick, and she hits too hard to be giving up those strikes. I think Karolina is going to struggle to get in the clinch, and even when she gets there, Joanna is equally as dangerous, and that's something that's just Karolina's her strongest aspect is either not going to happen enough or it's not going to be nearly as effective. Karolina has, Jedrzejczyk will be the higher output fighter, more impactful striker, so she'll do much more damage in this fight, and my prediction is Joanna Jedrzejczyk to defeat Karolina Kowalkiewicz by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, it is the welterweights showcased here as the champion, the newly crowned champion, the chosen one, if you will. Tyron Woodley, 16 wins and 3 losses, takes on the number 2 ranked fighter in the division, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, with a current record of 13 wins and 1 defeat. Now, this is the first Robbie Lawler to claim the title. Many felt that Woodley took advantage of a scenario with Robbie Lawler having been through some wars and opting to continue fighting, and it took its toll on Lawler, and Woodley was able to pounce. For Wonderboy Thompson, he destroyed the former champion Johnny Hendricks. He outclassed Rory McDonald. He asked Woodley directly for a shot at the title, and Woodley kind of avoided it and said, I don't know if I want to fight you. You're not a big money fight. Nonetheless, here we are. Thompson, 3 inches taller, 1 inch reach advantage, and he is actually a year younger than Tyron Woodley. Now, looking at Wonderboy first, the title challenger, he comes from a karate background, and you can see that in his stance. He's a switch stance fighter as well. He holds his hands very low, but he knows what he is doing. He leaps in and out. He's exceptionally hard to time. He manages distance very effectively, and he fights very long and throws from a variety of angles. He is a very diversified and dangerous striker, and he gives his opponents an absolute ton to think about, both offensively and defensively. Now, offensively, he has a varied kicking attack, if you will. Back power kicks, front leg techniques. He'll throw spinning attacks, which he landed on Jake Ellenberger to put him down. He hurt Johnny Hendricks with a turning side kick pinned against the cage. Also his hands. He throws a lot of single punches, but he does it exceptionally effectively. He'll move in, he'll move away, and then boom, slam forward with a nice straight right. He mixes in a quick jab. He had a right hand that both dropped Patrick Cote and Robert Whitaker in those fights. He rocked Johnny Hendricks with a big right, and when he got Hendricks pinned, he let his kicks go, and really Hendricks had nowhere to go along the cage and took the full brunt of those offensive weapons. Those long-range weapons of Stephen Thompson do an effective job at keeping you on the outside, keeping you backed up. That movement makes it very difficult for you to close the range, and once you do close the range, he looks for counter strikes to make you pay. Rory McDonald, who's an exceptionally technical and well-studied fighter, very gifted, was unable to figure out how to get on the inside enough with consistency to attack and get the job done against Wonderboy. When Johnny Hendricks, who's a very good wrestler, was able to get on the inside and try to take Stephen Thompson, Thompson struggled him off. He is very strong. Takedown defense, 81%. Rory went over 2. That's how infrequently Rory was able to get into position to look for takedowns, and you'd think that's something he would have gone for more often. Now, looking at the champion, Tyron Woodley, he has I'm going to start with the negative here, an inverse connection between his ability to win fights and their length. Woodley is 9-0 in fights that end in the first or second round, but he is now 5-3 in fights that go to the third round or beyond. So, he's got a winning record, but it's not overwhelming. His cardio seems to be an issue, as does his ability to deal with pressure. He doesn't deal with pressure that well. They kind of go hand in hand. When you're backing up and struggling with pressure, your cardio meter tends to drop off. He actually carries a 0.1 a negative 0.13 striking exchange rate. It's not big, but still it's a pretty sizable number when you consider he is the champion of a division. Woodley has massive one-punch power, though, and he counts on that a lot to make up the difference. 6 wins by knockout, including 5 of his last 6 victories, where he rendered his opponent unconscious. Against Roy Lawler, he backed him up against the cage, limited his movement, and let his power go. He has a massive right hand, which he caught Lawler with. He covers distance very quickly when he attacks. He can land a lot of strikes in succession and go for the finish. The other option he has at his disposal in this fight is he could look to use his wrestling and ground Thompson, force Thompson to work in the clinch, and try to wear him out with his wrestling. The biggest issue there is Woodley has to figure out a way to get on the inside to get in a position to cover that distance without getting tagged and get in a position to either land that knockout blow or get on the mat. I look at Tyron Woodley and his ability to do that diminish and knock guys out and to use his wrestling diminishes as time advances. Thompson's style, though, of sitting back and looking to counter at times could create those openings for Woodley to burst forward and slam something big home, score the knockout, shut this fight down, and get past a massive obstacle in the current challenger. The way I look at this, though, Rory MacDonald was unable to get in with his technical attack. Hendricks could not bull rush forward and land those power shots against the challenger in Stephen Thompson. I don't think Tyron Woodley will be either. He's probably faster than Hendricks, but he's not nearly as technical as Rory MacDonald. Thompson's speed, skill, and diversified attack will simply be too much for the one-note offense of the current welterweight champion, and my prediction is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson to defeat Tyron Woodley by TKO and become the new UFC welterweight champion. And finally, it is time for the main event of the evening. It is champion versus champion in the lightweight division, as the champion of the division, Eddie Alvarez, puts his belt on the line, 28 wins and 4 losses, against the challenger and the featherweight champion, the notorious one, Conor McGregor, with a current record of 20 wins and 3 losses. And so this is a massive fight in a massive venue, champion versus champion. The last, I believe, only time we've had this in the UFC, correct me if I'm wrong, where one champion from one division took on a champion from another division, was at UFC 94 when lightweight champion BJ Penn stepped up to take on welterweight champion Georges St. Pierre. Georges St. Pierre retaining his title in a rematch from an earlier fight in impressive fashion, forcing Penn to quit on the stool. Now, Alvarez, he's been racking up some sizable wins. There's a lot of people talking about him as being one of the greatest of all time in this division. He is the former Bellator champion. He defeated the former Strikeforce NWEC champions Gilbert Melendez and Anthony Pettis. Then he took out Rafael dos Anjos in impressive fashion. If he takes out Conor McGregor, look out for that resume. Now, McGregor, he had that UFC 194 knockout of Jose Aldo, one of the greatest featherweight champion we've seen of all time, in my opinion, until someone else proves me wrong. He knocked him out in 13 seconds. He has yet to defend that title. Certainly concerning. There's an interesting trend when you look at Conor McGregor's fights in the UFC. He has been dominant in his 4 first-round victories. It's hard not to be dominant in first-round victories. But in fights that have gone beyond the first round, he tends to be not nearly as impressive. He struggled with Nate in both those fights, obviously finished the one, going the distance in a back-and-forth war, which a lot of people felt he lost. He got absolutely pummeled by Chad Mendes until Mendes gassed out, and he finished him in round 2. When he faced Max Holloway, he got injured in that fight and was forced to rely on his wrestling to pick up the victory there. His only real competitive performance where he kind of ran the show from start to finish was against Dennis Seaver. So that really brings into question some of his issues with cardio and with putting together a complete performance over a prolonged period of time. If he knocks Alvarez the fuck out in the first round, no one cares. Physically, I said lightweight versus featherweight, but both men come in at 5'9", 5-inch reach advantage for Conor McGregor, and he is 4 years younger at 28. Alvarez, 32 years of age. Looking at their numbers first, Eddie Alvarez, 15 wins by knockout, 7-2 in fights ended by submission, 6-1 on the scorecards. He does have a loss by KO coming back in 2007, even though he's been rocked a number of times. But Alvarez has a very diversified and experience-laden resume. For Conor McGregor, 17 wins by knockout. The guy's got lightning in those fists. But his record on the mat, 1-win, 3 losses in fights ending by submission, 2-0 decision. So right now with Conor McGregor, it tends to be knockout or bust. Okay, I know he's coming off a decision win over Nate Diaz, but it was very, very close. McGregor, when you look at what the featherweight champion does well, he moves exceptionally well. He fights very long. He covers distance exceptionally well. Lots of kicks, lots of spinning techniques. But, as I said, how does that hold up over a 5-round fight? Does that tax his cardio? His big weapon is that, as Robin Black refers to it, that Celtic cross, that clean left hand. He's very quick with it, snakes it out. He throws a lot of casual movement, followed by lightning quick strikes. And it throws fighters off in their attempts to defend it. He'll paw out that right hand and then fire that left, use that right to distract, and come with that left exceptionally quickly. That straight left dropped Dustin Poirier. It hurt Nate Diaz in several times. Look for him to mix in an uppercut as well. So once you start guarding up against the straight punch, he'll come from underneath. When he fought Mendes, he used big combinations both against Mendes and against Nate Diaz in the second fight. When he had him back in the cage, he cut off their movement and unloaded, and that's a very effective way to do things. But Conor McGregor can be hit. Mendes landed several overhand rights early in that fight. Seaver actually was landing several lefts, and Dustin Poirier had success landing leg kicks. He can be hit, he can be hurt, as we saw with Nate, who hurt him several times in both of those matchups. And going back to the Diaz fights, that's the cardio. He started to slow down and struggle at the end of round 2 in the second Diaz fight. Was 170 pounds too much for him? He's now fighting at 155, which we haven't seen in the UFC. We'll see how that holds up. In that fight against Nate Diaz, he landed 164 strikes. He gave up 166. A lot of heart, but still defensively, it's a lot to give up. The other question is takedowns. How will he fare if a fighter tries to take him down? Dennis Seaver took him down, didn't hold him down very long. Mendes, though, landed a power double and absolutely smashed through Conor's guard on the mat and beat him up. Until he gassed, he could have been on his road to derailing the Conor McGregor hype train, if you will. And we wouldn't even be talking about this. Diaz obviously submitted him on the ground, scored a late takedown, which fatigue could have played a role in that situation, but still, we've seen Conor struggle on the mat. Now looking at the champion, the lightweight champion, the man whose belt is actually on the line here, Eddie Alvarez. Exceptionally good boxing, good footwork, in and out, closes distance well. He does get hurt, though. He's got a lot of heart. He can recover. It is still a concern with a man against Conor, fighting a man like Conor McGregor who has big power. Look for Eddie Alvarez to throw a beautiful leaping left hook. He'll throw jabs to the body, a hard right hand. He'll throw a straight left to the body as well. And he'll use it to set up that right hand coming over the top. Good combination striker overall. His leg kicks are pretty decent, and he can also do damage in short. Against Donald Cerrone, he was able to work in the clinch and land a lot of successive short punches that certainly had Cerrone in trouble. And he was able to KO Rafael Dos Anjos in a position where he was backing up. When Dos Anjos was pressuring him, the instant he got a little bit of an opening, boom, he landed his big strike and put that fight away. He can fight in the clinch, but he needs to use his boxing close to short-circuit the kicking game of the featherweight champion in this fight. We've also seen Eddie Alvarez. He is just a man. He can be hurt. Cerrone hurt him with low kicks and turned that fight over. Alvarez tends to be a little bit heavy on that lead leg, and that's something Conor McGregor could look to exploit. We saw him use a lot of kicks against Nate. He could go the same road against Eddie Alvarez. Melendez stunned him with a right hand in that fight, and Pettis was tagging with a lot of shots at range as well, and he was actually outlanded in both those matchups by a combined total of 93-73. So certainly not a perfect fighter, but he's a fighter nonetheless. When he beat Melendez, it was on the basis of his wrestling. He changed, he was wrestling, grounded him. Did the same thing against Anthony Pettis. I picked both those fights, Eddie Alvarez, to pull off the upsets, though. He landed 9 completions in those 2 matchups. He went over 5 against Cerrone, so you see how heavy he leans on his wrestling at times. He does a very good job of working his takedowns against the cage. He gets his head in, keeps working to close his hands, gets low, and eventually puts his opponent on the mat. Now, this fight, really what it comes down to is on one side, you've got the speed, the diversity, that kicking arsenal, and the power of Conor McGregor. For Eddie Alvarez, it's the boxing, the wrestling, the cardio, and his overall heart and ability to keep fighting. I don't like the way McGregor faded in the Diaz war. He ran away at times in that fight. Alvarez is going to keep coming. He's going to dig deep. He's going to take some damage, but he's going to push forward. Eddie can be hurt, finish this fight. And I said Eddie was getting backed up by Rafael Dos Anjos. McGregor should look to try and implement something similar. But I think the key to this matchup is the wrestling of the lightweight champion. Look for him to take Conor McGregor down. Look for him to beat him up, tire him out. Don't allow Conor room to breathe or attack. Really close the distance on that cage. Nate Diaz had success in that position, and he is not known for his wrestling. Alvarez needs to fight smart, fight to his strengths. McGregor loses a lot of pop as the fight progresses. We saw it against Nate Diaz, and if this fight gets into round 2, 3, 4, and 5, Conor is not nearly the same fighter. Alvarez is a multifaceted offensive fighter. He is prepared. His cardio will be ready to go. He will build on what Chad Mendes did with his top position pressure, and my prediction is Eddie Alvarez to defeat Conor McGregor by decision. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC 205, which will take place in Madison Square Gardens in New York City, which is a fantastic thing for the MMA community overall in the UFC, and we're looking forward to future events. This is a fantastic card. Certainly consider buying my bet packs if you're looking to bet. I give explanations. I try to provide as much information as I possibly can. I seem to be getting a lot of hate on some of my predictions, on some of my shows. That's fine. I have lots of supporters. I have lots of detractors. It comes and goes. I have no problem with that. So if you have something negative to say, by all means, voice it, but voice it in a mature, appropriate manner, if you will. And if you want to downvote my video, that's fine. As long as I'm hoping my supporters and the followers who like what I have to offer certainly give me that thumbs up. Thank you for everyone who tunes in, good, bad, or indifferent. Follow me on Twitter, KO_predictions. And thanks, guys. Enjoy the card. It's going to be a fantastic card. And I'll talk to you. We got a double show coming up, so I got to get to work right away. Take care, guys.